This is Purple Radio.
Hi everyone, today I am joined by Jonah Graham, who is running to be one of the next candidates for Durham Students Union's Welfare and Liberation Officer. Hi Jonah.
Hi, thank you for having me. It's really nice to be here. Thanks for taking time out of your busy Wednesday.
No, thank you so much for agreeing to let us ask you some questions. So starting off, I think with quite a broad question, if elected, what would your immediate concern be, / main focus, / first thing you think needs to be tackled? Why is this the case, and how would you go about actualizing this, especially if the pandemic is in full force as it is now and restrictions are still as strict as they are?
I completely agree. The pandemic has been really hard on students if you look around. So my first priority is to make mental health a priority. I think when you look around, when you're in isolation and alone, there's little voices that nag away at you, get a lot louder. And I think I know this. I know lots of people listening know this. So I think the task we have is kind of two steps. Firstly, we need to empower students with self-care techniques, preventative campaign to make sure they can support themselves. But then we need to look at how can we better support our students. So as I said, I'll do this firstly for a preventative campaign where I'm just going to go, here are the self-care techniques that you can use. And then secondly, I think the best thing we can do is show students where to go when they need help. So this is showing the pros and cons of every student support group in Durham, from the college welfare, from the associations to the counselling service. So for example, you live in college and you don't want to be overheard by the two people living next door. Where do you go? Or if you live in college and you want to go to college welfare, but you know the welfare officer, like you might not want to say all of your problems or your concerns to someone you know. So we need to kind of go, do you know what? Here is where you need to go for your problem. This is the best fit. And then finally, we need to make sure that minorities, that within training, within colleges, within the associations, and with the counselling service, they need to hire specialists. So people can say, oh, I want to come out of the closet, or they want to say, oh, I've been going through racism. How can you help me? So this will just make sure that mental health is just a priority and everyone will feel a bit more stable in the really stressful times. I'm a finalist, I know this.
Thank you. And what would you say then is the current student union's flaw regarding mental health then, what is making the system not as effective as it could be currently?
Do I think there's a necessary flaw? No, I just think reacting to Corona has been very difficult. I think that I don't know if it's a flaw, but the one thing that can be better, and I really want to make better, is just publicising those groups. And I think also we need to look at how we're giving welfare. We've had to move online, which has quite a lot of problems, especially in welfare, because you want everyone to be safe. So I've tried when making my manifesto to talk to as many college welfare and association welfare groups as possible. So we need to make sure they're represented and they're supported, because it's hard work to look after other people. We also need to make sure those online spaces are as safe as possible. As I said, you don't want to be overheard. So we need to make sure there's a private space, and we need to make sure they have the training so they can react, especially with Nightline. We need to expand Nightline training slightly. So people don't just know how to do anonymous Nightline training, they know how to do in-person drop-ins, be it online or in person, if that can happen next year.
Thank you. You've already mentioned this and touched on it slightly just a couple of minutes ago, but how are you going to make sure you work in conjunction with colleges and college level welfare? Because often each college will have their own individual kind of campaigns that they've got going on. And how will you promote the fact that the SU is also there for students? Because it's all well and good having a campaign, but often maybe these can slightly go over students' heads. So how are you going to really push and make sure that the campaigns and policies that you have in place are actually well known at a college level as well as a wider student body?
I completely agree. I'm currently an association president, so I'm quite in the liberation world, in the SU world. However, this year, with my experience and my student leadership, I've really tried to build a bridge with my association to the colleges. And I've done this through the college reps. So the LGBT Association has college reps in every college. Durham is quite a hard network. There are lots of colleges, lots of academic groups. The best way to do it is just connections and networking, essentially. So I would basically look to have monthly meetings with every single welfare rep, as well as checking in with the JCR presidents, just to make sure they're properly supported. So they can share my campaign, but then I can go, okay, what really needs to change? How can I help you?
Great, thank you. Kind of moving away now, well, not explicitly away from mental health, but different kind of vein. As I'm sure you're aware, last year, unfortunately, Durham University was ranked the second least inclusive institution in the UK for higher education. This is not a problem that disappears overnight. It's going to be a long process to kind of make progress. In light of this, how will you go about providing support for students who may have faced a certain level of culture shock when arriving at university and having been thrown into this completely alien environment? And what is your roadmap going forwards to tackle the wider social inclusion issue?
I think this is all about working with groups that already work on this issue. I have a certain lived-in experience. Other students will have a different lived-in experience, and those student representatives, I want to give them my platform. I'm quite biased. I'm an association president. I've had a really lovely year. I have a really lovely team. And I think if we can work with the associations or as other representative groups, then they already do a lot of the heavy lifting, and it's just helping them and make sure they feel represented. So as I said, Durham can be quite hard to facilitate change because you have to get the same decision made in every college or every group. So basically, I would just want to give student representatives of these groups basically a contacts list. This is every JCR president, principal. This is the EDI leads in the academic group. So this is going. How can we be more inclusive? How can we, create a broader change? It's helping them. It's helping them essentially do some of the work. Also, I want to give them my platform. Literally, I want to do kind of a social media takeover. I know it sounds a bit fluffy, but it's just each week, probably on a Sunday, I'm just going to give a different group my social media at the SU, and they can do their campaigns. They can highlight socials just to feel more inclusive. And finally, the Culture Commission. It's being worked on at the moment. I've collaborated with it. I know there's about 7 or 8 commissioners working on it with Churn. And I think I'm really excited just to kind of see what the recommendations are. And I want to work with groups to kind of, once the work's been done, to see what the recommendations are and really push forward on that.
Thank you. You kind of touched on it a couple of minutes ago, the bureaucracy of the SU and mentioning how it's quite difficult to actually get change made. And you mentioned talking about different groups. How are you going to really make sure that the bureaucracy and the system of the SU doesn't get in the way of policies you want to implement?
I feel that, as I said, there's often a divide between students and the SU, but I do see the SU as an opportunity, especially for me. I think if we talk about the wrong campaign, I think there are some genuine concerns about the SU and bureaucracy, but I think I see the SU as a platform, as an opportunity. I've been an association president. I've been on the student support review panel. So I have the expertise on my year abroad. I did quite a lot on sexual violence. So I actually see it as, yes, bureaucracy can be bad, but these officer roles, they're an opportunity to elicit the change you want. So I want to make mental health a priority. I want to make our campus safer, and I want to make sure minority voices are heard. So I don't know if the bureaucracy will get it in the way of welfare and liberation specifically. I'm unsure about that. Okay,
great, thank you. A very Durham issue, for want of a better phrase, is one that concerns private housing for students, especially second, third years, livers out. The SU last year ran a Take Time to Sign campaign. If elected, how would you further develop this, and what strategies would you adopt to keep students kind of in the loop with housing? Because I think one of the concerns with when the SU began their Take Time campaign is often these campaigns, people aren't thinking about housing until they see these campaigns, and it sort of, that starts off a cycle and starts off the panic. And as a result, they become counterproductive. What would your strategy for housing next year be if elected?
Ewan has done great work. Ewan is supporting the associate president, so I've always felt really supported. And I know this has been Ewan's real priority. I'm sure that second years are kind of forgotten about sometimes in Durham. Livers out, especially at the moment when everything is so college-centric. When you move out, campaigning-wise, and just socially, you can kind of be forgotten about a little. So I think Ewan's done some really good work. Firstly, we need to keep the work going in the sense that Ewan did the signposting. Here are all your rights as a liver out for private renting. That resource is there. That resource still needs to be publicised next year. Secondly, I know Ewan has some goals that he was working towards, some that I don't think have been fulfilled yet. So we need to kind of carry on pushing for these goals. For example, making sure that landlords give references from previous students. There's a system for that as well, to make sure when a student signs, they know actually this landlord is going to treat me fairly. So just looking, as well as working with the local MP, and Ewan's done that, just to keep the work going and pushing towards the goals, because some of them haven't quite been met yet.
Thank you. You previously just touched upon saying that mental health is going to be one of your big pushes this year if elected, and that would be one of your main concerns. What would you say, apart from mental health, are your top 3 priorities if you were one liberation officer?
So as I said, I want to make mental health a priority. Secondly, I want to make the campus safer. When you look around recently, years past, there's definitely a sexual violence problem. There's definitely a misconduct and discrimination problem, which is just horrible. It's a shame. So I think the task is preventing this from happening, but also supporting the victims. And so I kind of see doing this for a couple of policies. So firstly, we've moved online. Everything has moved online. So we need to make sure, as I said earlier, these online spaces are as safe as possible. I don't know if you know, recently there was a Zoom bombing at Mary's College, an LGBT plus event. It was horrible. It was really nasty. So we need to make sure that every club, every society can put on fun socials, but can also do it safely with the waiting room, making sure only Durham students can get in. But my main point about this is expanding nightline training for active bystandership, which is basically just giving students the tools to call each other out, to say, actually, you know what, your behavior right now, it's not acceptable. It's not okay. And I think personally, I'm kind of seeing the mother in my friendship group. And if I believe as a friend, you should say, actually, you know what, you're not acting, you're not being you, or you're completely out of line right now, depending on the situation. So I want to get active bystandership training. I want more people trained to give the training, and I want more people in JCRs and the colleges trained. So one day, hopefully, the active bystandership can be given to every single student alongside consent matters. Will I be able to do that in 1 year? Probably not. I've talked to a lot of groups about this, but that would be really what I want to do. And then finally, to support survivors when sexual assault happens, we need to make sure they know where to go. So we need to publicise the support and report tool so they can know, actually, you can make a complaint that's not criminal, or you can go to the police and make it criminal. And then we need to, again, boost groups that already do this. I know Durham Survivors, it's kind of nice. It's this anonymous group where you can share your stories. And I know I've talked to them. I'm working on kind of an LGBT plus specific post for resources. So I think we should boost those. I've talked to It's Not Okay Durham about a sexual assault peer support group. Unfortunately, because of Corona, we can't do this. It's not safe enough to do online. But I would really look to try and get that going if we can get in-person meetings as safely as possible. The time comes. So yeah, I just think on that, every single student deserves to feel safe. That's a human right, to feel safe in your own campus. And then my last priority is just making minority voices heard. So as I said, I want to give them a contacts list, want to do media takeovers, and I want to work with them to implement the Culture Commission, as well as have monthly meetings so I can check in with them. Thank you.
Thank you. Lots of those issues that you just talked about kind of point to a culture within Durham, often that is very negative. There's been lots of negative press about it. And lots of kind of how we would change this, or how you would change it maybe, is bottom-up approach. So new freshers starting kind of asserting this is the values of Durham University, this is how we need to behave, and this is how we're going to make campus safe, XYZ. How would you change the current fresh? So I think every fresher has to pass a consent test before you're actually allowed to matriculate. Would you add to any of these kind of compulsory courses that you have to take, or what would your plans be for the incoming freshers to aid this kind of changing culture?
I definitely agree that kind of a bottom-up approach, kind of top down, is important. The university needs to signpost and signal that when breaches occur, they're not going to be accepted. But if you look at Durham University, the same behaviours and patterns occur each year, yet students move on and graduate, which kind of speaks there must be a wider problem culturally, what's going on. And I think, you're right, the best time to really target this is in freshers. It's when people come to Durham, when you can go, university, it's a place for learning. Let's learn more about how to treat each other so everyone can be happy. So yeah, as you said, consent matters. Consent matters was a good start, but we need to build on it. And as I said, I essentially would like active bystandership training as a long-term goal to be compulsory for every student. Just because I know it's being rolled out in academic departments, it will just help us prevent each other from doing harm, and it will help a lot of people. I'd also look into they actually recently passed an Inclusivity Week motion, where they're just basically going to give platforms to different marginalised communities. I would definitely look at basically kind of just just a workshop or a talk, a discrimination talk to say this is actually how it can affect students if this behaviour is carried out. It wouldn't be long, it could be half an hour, and it would just show students who maybe don't know about marginalised communities. Like if you haven't spent time with people of colour or LGBT students, you might not know what the best practice is. So we need to make sure that if students get it wrong in a controlled environment, that's okay. We're here to learn. A lot of it's grounded in ignorance. So yeah, I think the bottom-up approach, Freshers Week, is really important.
Thank you. Thank you so much for speaking to me. One last thing, if you had maybe 30 seconds, a minute, however long kind of you need within reason, sell yourself. Why should Durham students vote for you to be the next Welfare and Liberation Officer? You kind of a summary of your campaign.
Firstly, I'm extremely experienced. I've been an association president. I've been on the student report panel. But also you get someone who's compassionate. I really pride myself on caring over people, so I really want to listen. And you should vote for my manifesto, because I consulted all the welfare groups, I consulted the associations, most of them. And so you will be able to get someone who will make mental health a priority, make the campus safer, and lift minority voices, because I'm experienced, I'm a student leader, and I have the policy, if you look at my manifesto, to create tangible change.
Great. Thank you so much. Thank you very much, Jonah, for speaking to us today. Do you is it the SU website or where voting starts? I think that will be well signposted when it gets to the time, but thank you very much.
Thank you so much for talking to me.
For more of Purple Radio's interviews with candidates in the run-up to the SU election, click on the playlist now.